Well, welcome everyone. I imagine we're all going to start trickling in little by little. I'll commence the start of this first town hall in just a moment, but for those that are here at this point in time, I'd just like to say thank you very much. We'll start very briefly. Again, a nice note to those that may be entering in right about now. We're just waiting for a few folks to settle in. We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll begin our first town hall for future climate leaders. If you're receiving this message loud and clear, we thank you very, very much for your presence. All right, so I have 1 minute after 7 o'clock. I think it's fair to start off this first town hall. Before we begin, it is important for me to properly and purposely state, we begin this event by acknowledging that many of us are living on unceded land and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee. We are grateful for the opportunity to live where we do, and we thank all the generations of people who have continued their responsibilities to Mother Earth since time immemorial. Abraham Francis of the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne is graciously present to provide us with a Thanksgiving address. Abraham.
Sego Gwego, Delhung Hiate Yungyat, Nene Hodunishoni, Nene Ganikahaga, Nene Akwesaslono, Nene Wakachlono. So, hi, my name is Abraham Francis, and I am Mohawk from Akwesasne and Deer Clan. And I was invited by the River Institute to do the opening. I will give it in my language, and then I'll give a little explanation. So, now. Kyonkyokwa Sawadohun Seals. Kaniguali Western, Danchi the one of Palado Nesungaya Tizo, Negadi, or Honda Galua Dekwa. Onguano Hitstone. Tony on Tohakne Guatigula. To. Aguego Oscar the Walkwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Unguet Sua. Tony on Tohakne Guatigula. To. Aguego Oscar at the Walkwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne. Yikinistaha Hunja. Tony on Tohakne Guatigula. To. Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Onagat Sua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Gajet Sua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Orla Sua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Ohunda Sua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Anuquat Sua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Kayan Tusula. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Gondilio. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula. What would noon? Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Ogulet Sua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. Excuse me. Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Ojida Agua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Gaeli Negawalage. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne La Divelas. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Sungwajia Yokinekwa Galakwa. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Asutaneka Galakwa. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Ojida Agua. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Aguego Oscar de Wafwet Nuni and Guatigula dona de Tolados ne Gaeli Niungaitige. Tony of Tohakne Guatigula. So Agora gosto de dar apoio no ninho com a Nigula da noite no lado dos né sungai diesel Tonio toha kne com a Nigula. So ona wadali wa hodungo nua wani salade doga o teno sayon kwa Nigu halo. Ize gine ize wado sodel egadi Tonio toha kne kwa Nigula. So I just gave you the opening address, or what I call the Yohandagali Wadakwa, and it's what it translates to is the words that come before all else. And it's an important speech that we give before important meetings and decisions are made, so we can keep all of our relations in mind as we make those decisions and discuss really important subjects. And I think one of the favorite things for me that one of my friends actually introduced during one of our meetings was what it's really great at doing is bringing our minds into the space. So when I say what I'm saying is we're bringing our minds together to acknowledge an aspect of creation. And what I started with is the people, and I worked my way up to the creator. And then I say, so, and that means our minds are now one. And then the proper response is to, which means I agree. And that's just one of those ways that we bring ourselves together to think about these different relationships that we have with creation and that we keep them in mind, because our minds are usually all over the place and we're trying to arrive someplace and we're just thinking about, well, what am I going to do after this? And where am I going after this? And that can often inhibit our ability to think clearly and speak good words into a space. And as we're introducing ourselves into this, I'm trying to think about how many months we're looking at, like 7 months that we're going to open this, and we're going to continue these discussions, and we're going to become climate advocates over this time and open the space and learn a lot over this time. So I'm actually not going to close it at the end of this meeting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it open, and that our minds are going to keep creation in our thoughts as we move forward and we start thinking about how we're going to make change. And so I appreciate the opportunity to present or to do the introduction and to do the opening, and look forward to participating in these town halls as they continue, and the opportunity to share the Indigenous perspective and the perspective of my community and how I see it applying in the future. Nyawagoa, Tuknigo.
Thank you for framing our thoughts and our presence of ourselves. And thank you for that address, Abraham, truly. All right. My name is Lee Theodore. This project is called Future Climate Leaders, and it's an opportunity for our community to grow and develop towards climate solutions that are specific to us here. When this opportunity first presented itself to me, I asked myself a fundamental question. Beyond organizations like Transition Plus and such similar groups in our area, what options do I have as an individual to really dig into climate change? As I was unable to satisfy this question for myself, I felt there was an opportunity to build something into this space. So consider me an expression of everyone else that is beyond a scientific space, or everyone else that is just living their life through a 9 to 5. This is a very, very large challenge, and we would like to give it some kind of context that we can actually engage with it. And so this evening, we will start our town hall here at home with the River Institute. We'll be speaking with our esteemed guest, if you will. We have Jeff Ridal, who's the Executive Director of the River Institute. We also have Pam Maloney, the Fund Development Officer of the River Institute, and myself, the Project Coordinator of the River Labs project called Future Climate Leaders. As the project coordinator, I'll begin to speak about the purpose of this after we've talked to Jeff and Pam. But at this point in time, I'd like to introduce our panel of speakers for today. So as I mentioned, we have Jeff Ridal, Executive Director, and we also have Pam Maloney, who is the Fund Development Officer. The reason why these folks are here today to have this conversation with us is to ground us from a scientific truth moving forward, and to bring purpose and context to what it is that we're going to be doing. This is going to be a large endeavor, but it is backed by a great organization that truly cares and wants to see change in their community. So at this point in time, it's going to go to our guests now. Good evening, Jeff. Could you please give us an understanding of the River Institute and why this project makes sense now?
Thanks, Lee. And thanks for that introduction as well. And thanks to Abe, as usual. Abe, you always inspire me with your wonderful words. And the Thanksgiving address is the one that really, as you say, brings our minds together, and it's a great way to start. So yeah, Lee, I guess my challenge is or my task here is to give you a little bit of context about the River Institute, a little bit of background, and help frame it in terms of why we're interested in the Future Climate Leaders Project. So Jeff Ridal, Executive Director and Chief Research Scientist at the River Institute, and I've been fortunate to be with the River Institute for over 25 years. In fact, the River Institute was created some 27 years ago as a nonprofit research and education organization. It was really a community-based initiative to address years of impact on the river from heavy industry, municipality, and agricultural inputs. And also, it kind of came about because at the time there was a focus in this part of the river. It became an area of concern, and there was a major program to help clean up the river. And we wanted, what this community wanted was to bring a local focus to this effort, to help remediate the river and bring local solutions to the efforts. And so we evolved and we took on the mission to be a science-based organization inspiring and guiding communities towards healthy and sustainable river ecosystems. So how does that take us to future climate leaders? Well, I guess it goes without saying that river health and sustainability are tightly connected to climate change, because the potential that warming temperatures and all the related climate effects can have widespread and devastating effects on the river, its biota, and the people like ourselves that have the privilege of living near and enjoying the benefits of the river. So in addition to warmer water temperatures, extreme weather events and rain events and reduced ice cover are some of the factors associated with climate change. I think it's recent memory where we can think about major events where we've had climate change related impacts, such as the high water levels in Lake Ontario in 2017 and 2019 that caused severe flooding of nearshore cottages and damages to infrastructure throughout the Great Lakes area or throughout the Lake Ontario area. And we had high water levels in Lake Ontario. And then paradoxically, we had low water levels near us just above the dam at Long Sault, because what was happening was we were trying to take that water off of the lake. And so that gets to show you how climate change can have different impacts, whether you're living in one part of the country or another. And we see it, we see different parts of this elephant, and it's hard to see the whole picture. So it turns out that in 2019, in terms of climate effects, 2019 was the wettest year on US record. Extreme weather events like those 100-year rainfalls, those storms that seem to happen every year now, every other year, actually have impacts because it washes out into the sewer systems, and it over surpasses the capacity of a lot of sewer systems and combined sewer systems. So we end up with more nutrients, more runoff, more contaminants, and things like plastics that actually go into the lakes and the river. And the same sort of thing happens on agricultural fields. As we get these large events, we get more nutrients running off. And so that can result in dumping and discharging of billions of liters of stormwater and runoff into the lakes, resulting in a number of impacts, such as increased growth of algae and increased amount of contaminants into our ecosystem. Rising water temperatures also result in changing and having effects on biodiversity, such as we see water temperatures rise, we're going to start seeing a loss of the cold water species and an increase in warmer water species. So together with those extreme weather events, the nutrient inputs, and the warmer temperatures, what we're going to see as well will be a shift in terms of algae. Research done at the River Institute actually has found a tipping point in terms of just below 25 degrees, 24.8 degrees actually was the actual number, where in local waters, where we saw that starting to dominate were the blue-green algae. And that's important. Blue-green algae, also known as cyanobacteria, have the potential to be toxic. They actually can make toxins that are harmful for people and for animals to drink. So this is where it gives you ideas. As water temperatures warm, we may be seeing more of this type of effect. Fortunately, so it's interesting as a tipping point because the center, middle of the river barely gets over 24 most of the time. But what we see on the corners and in the near shore areas and the tributaries, that we can get those higher temperatures. So what we don't want to see is the bulk of the St. Lawrence River, the main flow of the river, starting to creep above that 25-degree mark. So clearly climate change cannot be ignored, tightly connected to the river health, and something that I think is very much on the agenda for the River Institute. It was some 10, 12 years ago, we got first involved with a climate change related project, teaming up with the City of Cornwall, Eastern Ontario Training Board, and other local partners to start something called the Cornwall Carbon Reduction Initiative. And what we found at that time were people were very interested on an individual basis to know what they could do and what their families could do. But they also wanted to learn more. What were the options? How could they make a difference? And so here we are, fast forward 10 years later, we've been working and with partners on climate change projects, but this is the one that we really now are leading. And we can already see a change in attitudes compared to those times. We possibly because we all as people, we've felt the impacts. We've seen the extreme events. We've seen those 100-year storms every couple of years. And as well as what I see in that change into over time is now we see companies, organizations, even governments, all stripes, making changes, coming up with their own solutions and approaches to climate change reduction. We know that it's got to be on the agenda. We know we have to do something, and we have to marshal the efforts together. So, but we can't just look at governments for actions. We have to look at ourselves and how we can make a difference. And so we believe that important changes can be made towards working at the local level to make their own choices and contributions to share knowledge and awareness. It was just a couple of weeks ago that the River Institute presented its year in review and talking about the past year, and we had that kind of looking back, of course, was really a year dominated by COVID and the pandemic. And one of the things I said at that time was, you really, no time else have I felt that we felt so connected others around the globe as we all face that same challenge. And yet it sort of rings, it's an interesting ring to people who work in the environment, because we've always known that there are global challenges. So we have to think globally and act locally. That's an old environmental saying, but it's never more true than now. So we feel that the River Institute has an important role in creating this dialogue, in hosting future climate leaders. And I think these town halls can foster that conversation, look and create opportunities to look more and deeper at climate change and at the actions and the pathways that we, as all future climate leaders, can take. So I'm looking forward to traveling that journey with you in the coming months. And I pass it back to Lee for the next step in our journey.
Thank you kindly, Jeff, for that wonderful introduction and that understanding and where the trajectory of this project is going to go. Thank you for giving us that scientific framework. My next guest is Pam Maloney. She was one of the first virtual conversations that I had an opportunity to have with the River Institute. Pam, it's one of my most favorite statements that I've received thus far. There's something that you said to me and it is stuck, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but I want to state it because it's so important. And then I'm hoping you can just continue to speak from there. The quote that I have is, "Science is only worth something if we share it." And I felt that. So if you can give perspective around that and from the context of people and science, I think this would start to frame our conversation moving forward for this project.
Sure, Lee. Thanks for that intro. It's a shame that all of our conversations are still virtual right now, aren't they? But we'll be in the same room at some point soon, I know. So welcome everybody, and thank you to this group and to all of you for joining us on this beautiful evening. And Lee, thank you for inviting me to speak this evening. It's a real honor for me actually to be part of this first town hall and to be part of the launch of this really exciting new project at the River Institute. So yeah, my name's Pam, and I've been at the River Institute for almost 16 years, I think now. And really, I came to the River Institute based on my background in science and writing. But the role that I play now and my job at the Institute is really based more on my volunteer experience and my community networks and the community work that I've done. That's really what's shaped the role that I hold now. And you know, what began as a job doing communications and a bit of fundraising evolved into a lot of public relations, a ton of grant writing, and obviously getting involved in a lot of project development and most recently strategic planning at the River Institute. So over my years, and I think this past year more than ever, I've really learned to embrace the power of community. And I think you know already this is a theme of this evening's talk. But what I mean by that, the power of community, is the power that exists when people from all different backgrounds come together with different opinions, different thoughts, different angles, but all worried or concerned about the same issues and the common interests. And this power of community is what drives change and what drives the future. And really, this is what Future Climate Leaders is all about. As Jeff said, the River Institute was founded by our community. Our work has always been driven by community concerns, and we feel a responsibility to be accountable to our community, but also to the creatures in the environment that don't have a voice. So Lee's question, science means nothing if it isn't shared, is one that we take really seriously. Scientific research must be shared with the public in order for it to have a meaning and a purpose. And it's our job as scientists to share scientific information in a way that everyone can understand. And really, this is how the River Institute's education programs evolved. Where we began as a research institute, very quickly, it was obvious that we need to have a mechanism to share our knowledge with others. And what better place to start with is with young people. Dr. Brian Hickey and our education team are just amazing at doing this, as many of you already know. They share our work with young people and to get them interested and curious about the environment. School programs let students work side by side with scientists to see what a biologist really does and help them understand why we study water, why we are worried about water quality, and why we monitor fish and other species. So through these school programs, as well as our camps and water festivals, student mentorships, internships, and lots of summer jobs, the River Institute reaches over 6,000 students every year. That's something I'm always amazed every time I say that out loud. And obviously, COVID has changed our delivery mechanisms a little bit and gave us a bit of a setback. But we've now moved online and we're really back on track to reach similar numbers, and really looking forward to the near future where we can be together with our young people in the same space. So we also do a lot of community outreach programs, like our monthly Science and Nature Untapped speaker series that I know a lot of you take part in. We have an annual River Symposium that has a community day aspect to it, public talks and presentations like this, and lots of news releases, online communications, and social media. So this is how we share science with our community, and we think it's really important to do that well. In the opening address, our Mohawk partners remind us how we humans are part of the ecosystem and we must do our part to protect its balance. But this raises a fundamental question. Where do I fit in the balance? And what's my responsibility as an individual? It's a tough question, right? I'm still not sure what that answer is for myself, but I'm really looking forward to getting to the bottom of that through this series. Recently, we've been doing strategic planning at the River Institute and sort of planning our path for the next few years. And one of the questions that we posed to our team, and this was our staff, our board, and also some other partners in the community that know us well, we asked them this question right at the start. What are the barriers that prevent communities from fulfilling their responsibility to the environment? And surprisingly, the unanimous answer was not a lack of science or a lack of data. It was a lack of awareness, a need for guidance, and some real examples of what individuals can do. So we know that we need to do better at providing knowledge. We need to learn from each other. We have to learn from other communities, develop more opportunities like this one tonight for community consultation. And we believe that Future Climate Leaders Project is giving us the mechanism to start those conversations and be part of the answers together. But you know, we're not starting from scratch here, right? The River Institute's been doing a bit of this for the last 27 years. And we have lots of networks already and partners to help facilitate this process. Our research partners are diverse. We work with universities, government agencies, corporations, and private sector partners, and we're always striving to expand our reach through partnerships. Obviously, there's lots of locally based groups like the Great River Network and Transition Cornwall Plus, and businesses like the Local Fill that are already spearheading community programs toward food sustainability, waste reduction, river cleanups, and giving people opportunities to get involved. At the River Institute, the Great River Rapport Project is working with local groups and lots of other partners to help to share the health of the ecosystem in ways that everyone can understand, and also provide opportunities and links for people to get involved in local initiatives. So these programs overlap and link really well with future climate leaders to help people find their own little piece of the puzzle, find the thing that flips your switch, and help you figure out what you can do to contribute. So I guess you can probably tell we're pretty excited about this new program. We're excited about future climate leaders and the interactions it will bring. And I really hope you'll join us in the coming months to learn more. You'll discover that Lee is a really great leader. He's got great energy and he's a really terrific motivator. And we're all keen to do our part to inspire and help everyone along the process over the coming months. So with that, Lee, I'll turn it back to you and thank you.
A very big thank you to you, Pam, for providing that context. We definitely are a community. We definitely have an opportunity from our own perspectives to decide on the solutions that we need to enact to strive towards a solution towards climate change within our own community. So now that I've spoken with Jeff and I've spoken with Pam, I think it's time for you folks to speak with me. So this is a paperless, plastic-free product. This is where we're going to be going. We're going to be going into the opportunity of looking at options within our lifestyle that would help us support a solution that is specific to us in our lifestyle. So plastic-free may be an opportunity for you folks to think about, but that's not the point that I want to start with. My name is Lee Theodore. Who I am is not as important as what I do, and what I do is facilitate a project called Future Climate Leaders. This will be achieved through 3 approaches. We have the opportunity through monthly town halls to gather around themes and topics. We have an opportunity down the line for a website where your actions will be able to be geared towards you. And then finally, on the tail end of everything, we have workshops to develop community resiliency. So with town halls, we hope to serve a few functions. As we know, there are a variety of facts and figures available to us around climate change, and we have to respect one another's understanding of this. Therefore, the town halls give us an opportunity as a community to gather around a single speaker, a single topic, and literally have the same conversation. You can take that back to your office, to your home, or your respective recreational circles and begin to have that conversation on the same thread that most people that are attending this town hall are able to do so. So instead of downloading conversations from the outside, let's have a means to have one internally, and town halls are the vehicle that we're going to do that with. The belief and intention is that you leave these town halls with a new thought. You will broaden your willingness to explore more information around climate change and develop solutions that work best for you. And the whole goal here is an accumulative effect. What I do in my home may not necessarily be the requirement in your home, but if we're all striving together towards the same end, that accumulative momentum is where the actual magic takes place. This is nothing revolutionary that we're doing here, but if you consider one more thing, as much as your interest allows around climate change, we are raising your awareness. And collectively, if we can get on the same page around issues that matter, we'll be better equipped to ask questions and answer them together. So at this point, you may ask, okay, cool. I watched an astronaut from NASA tell me about what NASA has been seeing in regards to climate change. But Lee, my feet are here. What can I do here? What can I do in my own life? How can I matter? This is where our website will come into play. You're going to be able to calculate your carbon footprint. And there's a lot of different aspects to calculating your carbon emissions, your carbon contributions. It could be what kind of dwelling that you live in, what kind of transportation do you have, whether you compost. So all of those elements down the line, we're going to have that available to you so that you can actually pull up your number. And to give that kind of structure and relevance, I didn't know what my carbon footprint was. When I went through the process, it was determined that I contribute 8 tons of carbon emissions per year. And so just the idea of like, okay, well, what's 8 tons? Like, how do we wrap our minds around these concepts? We're going to see a lot of information, but it's still not enough to make it accountable to us. And so the description that was provided to me was, imagine a bus, but a balloon surrounding that bus. That is roughly a ton of carbon. So I have 8 buses worth of carbon that I produce. Now, if there's 120,000 of us in Eastern Ontario within our specific area, imagine if all of us had that kind of rating, and if we could drop that down by half, what would that mean? But again, we're all coming from different points, and that's kind of where we want to start. We want to be an intersection of where people start and they can move through their journey. So now, as an individual, we have a number that we can use to deliver context and understanding and a connection to a personal pursuit of a solution. More importantly, we're going to take that number and direct you to local resources and resources abroad that can help you in your journey towards a climate change solution in a way that makes sense to you. I'm taking the moment to express the reals of this project. This project is not meant to satisfy all things to all people in all places at the same time. It is meant to make working within a solution more accessible to us here in Cornwall, Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry, and Akwesasne, Neowan. What it's meant to do is move people from awareness to action with an emphasis of what is taking place locally. Workshops are where individuals that are further along on their climate change solutions journey can come for development that will allow them to cultivate more knowledge about solutions and processes that they can enlist in their own homes and become a living resource within their own respective communities. So that is what is happening on the front end, forward-facing, public-facing. On the back end, I'm also tasked with having conversations with elected officials, stewards within the space of sustainability, which includes individuals, organizations, and committees that exist around issues as it pertains to the environment. If there is an opportunity for intersection on joint ventures, we are actively seeking out those spaces too. So if you exist within this space and I have not spoken with you, please do not feel slighted, delayed, or denied. I would welcome you to send me an email so that we can have that conversation. Now, let's get into the themes that we have slated to take place for this year. This is where I would like to seek your attention for questions under the words and the themes that you see here. What questions do you feel that you would ask? And if you already brought your questions prepared, we're welcoming them as well too. You're going to put them into the chat box and they're going to come forward and we're going to have a dialogue around that. But this is the program that we intend to roll out for the rest of the year. So we're going to start with our first one. Congratulations, you made it. You did the hardest thing. You sat in your seat, you're comfortable, and you're engaging in this conversation. Essentially, what this first public town hall, introduction to town halls, topics, and themes is meant to do is structure what a town hall is going to look like and going to feel like. We have to work through the mechanics as well. So this is a good thing on our end. This will allow you to understand and have the expectation of what you're going to experience. It could be perceived that we would put a guest speaker up and people are going to barrage them with questions. That is not necessarily a good outcome. One person may not be able to answer all things. So we're structuring in this way so that you leave with information, but you also have the ability to engage with the person that is available. So before, do I want to do that? I'm going to go through this timeline, and before Pam and Jeff leave, I want to ask them one more question, just so we have a nugget of truth to take home with us tonight. So, grounded in our region and Indigenous introduction, we have the wonderful Abraham Francis, who's on site right now. And that will be an opportunity for us to have that conversation with our Indigenous neighbors, to have that perspective that we really need to consider as a truth, as an opportunity for us to look through a lens, to respect the stewards that came before and take that understanding and knowledge and incorporate that into who we are. And from there, we have a view from above through the eyes of the skies. We have a wonderful NASA astronaut who, yes, has been to space, will be speaking to us in this area regarding what NASA has seen over the course of time, looking down at our Earth. From there, we're going to have an Indigenous knowledge systems conversation. We're welcoming back Abraham Francis, and we're going to have a lovely lady by the name of Yannick Rosal, who's going to be able to have a conversation around her understanding of Indigenous knowledge. And we're going to present that in two ways. We're going to have Abraham on one side representing heritage and a full understanding, a full body, and we're going to have an educated person representing the institutional knowledge. And we're going to see where those two worlds come together and what information we can take away from that. From there, grounded in our region, We're going to have an opportunity to talk about what's going on locally. We're going to leave that open and abroad. There's an opportunity there for our in-house scientists at the River Institute to provide us with some very, very cool information, but also to see what else is going on in our area. From there, we have an opportunity with a permafrost professor who's going to be providing us with some great insight as to what we do here has an impact elsewhere, and that reverberation of what that impact is elsewhere, what it means to us back here, because this is a closed loop. What we do does definitely have an impact. And then from there, at home, what can we do? It's going to be an opportunity to go through a supply chain. We'll be looking at a manufacturer that provides plastic-free products, all fingers crossed. And from there, below that, we're going to have a retailer that is in the space of sustainability and getting rid of plastics altogether. And from there, underneath that retailer, we're going to be looking at an individual, hopefully a family, that is in this space, that is living sustainability. And so from there, we're going to have an opportunity to see from the top, a producer, a retailer, and a consumer, the experiences that they're having, the challenges, and the things that they would like everybody to know. And hopefully through that lens, we can respect that it is difficult to make a lifestyle change, but we can also be aware that it exists and that solutions are available to us. And there's a reason why we want to have at least take on some of that endeavor. And then finally, the grand finale. Even I can't take the velvet sheet off of that opportunity. I won't tell you what we're going to do at the very end, but we'd really like to bring this whole conversation home. So stay tuned. We'll let you know what that last conversation is going to be like. So this is kind of the roadmap for what we're going to be going through. And so these are the themes that we're going to be presenting. And these are the kinds of conversations that we want you to think about. So refer to this as your guide as to how these conversations are going to go. I'm looking at our clock here. And before we open it up to questions, I want to ask Pam and Jeff just for a number. I think the most important thing, the challenge that we're having, that I'm having as an individual, is there's so much information. The International Energy Association just released a huge report that's going to have a great impact on how governments are going to make decisions. I've got a statistic of 1,000 gigatons of carbon is trapped underneath permafrost. The average output of the human race per year is about 10 billion gigatons. There's a lot of numbers that we all see, whether we're watching news or we're on the internet, and we see this information, and how do we form it and put it together? And so one of the things that I want to do with these town halls is, as much information that you're getting, I want you to walk away with one nugget that you can actually use. So I'm going to go back to Jeff really quickly. And Jeff, my question to you is, what is a number or a figure that we can take away with ourselves regarding the river? And then Pam, I'll come back to you with a question as well.
I was muted for a second there. I tried to unmute. How's that? Can you hear me now? Okay, so I think that the number that strikes me with respect to the river and thinking about the river is that number 25. This is something what I spoke about in terms of, that's a number we don't want to get to in terms of the maximum water temperature in the main body of the St. Lawrence River. We're below that on a regular basis. But as I said, when we start to get above 25, we know we're going to start to see more and more of those cyanobacteria that we don't want to see in our waters. So let's keep that number 25 and keep our temperatures below that in the river. So that's my number.
25 is the magical number. And so if I understand correctly, above that, we're going to have algae blooms. And remind me again, Jeff, please, if we have algae blooms, what is the quote unquote downstream effect that could be taking place?
So, I mean, there's always the potential for different types of algal blooms. So I'm as a scientist, I can't just say that there's no chances of having algae blooms. So what we don't want to have are create the conditions for the rapid growth of those blue-green algae that can create toxins, that one can make the water taste and smell bad, and secondly, even make it harmful to drink. So that's the reason why we don't want to get up to above 25.
Thank you, Jeff. Mademoiselle Pam, is there a factor, figure, or a number that we can walk away regarding the River Institute, just that we have context? And actually, maybe you can help me understand something too. The building of the River Institute is right next to the St. Lawrence College, but it is not a part of the St. Lawrence College. Like, could you kind of answer those two questions? Give me a number and kind of highlight the actual River Institute for me for better context for those that are out there.
Sure. Well, I was afraid you were going to ask me a number question. Can't really give you a magic number, Lee, but I guess what I can tell you is, you know, from where I sit and in my role and what I do and how many times I tell the story of the River Institute and what it's here for and how it ended up here in our community, you know, we aspire to be this place of excellence, and I think we're achieving that in many ways. But the biggest factor that makes the River Institute so unique as a research organization, as a community organization, is the approachability of our staff and our people. And I know it's awful right now that people can't just come in the door and say hi, but there's not too many research type places with, you know, we've got 5 PhD research scientists, all sorts of other biologists and field specialists and lab technicians that work at the River Institute. And everybody is just super friendly, easy to talk to. There's no stupid questions. And I think that's probably the thing I want to express the most, you know, is that anybody, anytime can come to us with questions and concerns too, and, you know, have a conversation. So that's sort of the thing I'm most proud of, I think, about the River Institute. In terms of the misconception of where we're located or, you know, who we are, I think the two biggest facts or, you know, assumptions that people make about the River Institute, there's 3 actually. One is that we're part of the college. One is that we're the conservation authority. And the third one is that we're a government agency. None of those are true. So the River Institute is located on the property right next to St. Lawrence College, and we're a little difficult to see. You can't see us from the road, actually. You've got to come right in and through the parking lot of the college to find our building. But the Institute is an independent nonprofit charity with charitable status like other nonprofits, and we work completely independently. So that means, like other charities, we have to raise money. We've got to find the funding for everything we do, including our salaries. And that's an ongoing process, really, for us. The other aspects, no, we're not the Conservation Authority, like I said. And the biggest one is, no, we're not government. Although we do get some government funding for programs like this one, actually. This is an Environment Canada funded grant that's supporting this program. But it's a program that we applied for, and the funding that we receive from the government is specific to deliver this project. So the River Institute does not receive any core funding from any government agencies. And I guess those are the main debunks of myths.
Thank you. Perfect. So now I've got some facts and figures we can walk away with. We're now going to open this up to the questions. Let me just make sure my script says the right things. All right. All right, so my technical man on the back end side, we're going to open ourselves up to some questions. Thank you very much for making my screen proper. I'm going to start with the most recent one and work myself up. And it seems to be a lot of questions. So thank you very much for everybody that has been here. We appreciate this. So I've got a question from John Towndrow. Is there research on how much CO2 is produced through the mowing, fertilizing, and pesticide use related to lawns in Canada or even in Ontario? So first things I'm going to say is we're going to take these questions and we're going to filter them through our organization to find out if we can get some answers. Not all questions are going to be answered in this moment of time, but they're still relevant to what we can provide down the road. So don't be deterred if I'm not Siri or Google and I'm not spewing out information. It is not my place to stand in that space, but those questions are all welcomed. So I don't have an answer, but we will see what we can find out about this information. Below that, I have a question that says, as a follow-up to the above comment, to what extent does tree cover close to streams impact positively on the reduced water temps in the tributaries? Now, I think that is a question that can be answered within the River Institute. Again, I'm not the individual that's going to do that, but I'm going to get that information back to you. I've got Mr. Abraham putting his hand up. I'm going to mute myself. Abe, if you want to step into the space, you're more than welcome.
So as well as being the environmental services manager, I do have a background in forest ecology. And in particular, the questions you're asking are very important. And I think they need to be put in context when you're thinking about the trees and the plants that are removed to maintain a monoculture lawn, which also causes more runoff into the water and damages the lakes and the waters in that relationship. So I'm sure that it's not necessarily the CO2 produced from mowing and fertilizing and pesticides related to lawns in Canada. More, it's like the lack of green space and more carbon extractive plants in that area, like trees or bushes or things like that. Now, in relationship to the next one, tree coverage is super important to impacting stream water temperature with the shade that they provide. And just, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for forests. I love forests. Forests are super important to helping us control flooding, reduce erosion, and I'm just always going to advocate for trees. So there is plenty of research out there. And I think what it ultimately comes down is how do we put these things into a story that ultimately connects back to that climate action that we're talking about? So how do you create a relationship with a tree, a relationship as a family member? Because that tree is something that takes such a long time scale to become this big, mature, beautiful tree. And so when you think at those levels, sometimes it gets exhausting. But I think that there is so much out there, and it's been quantified with how much money is saved, how much runoff is affected, how much carbon is sequestered, and there's a variety of mechanisms. And I think that might even be part of one of the tools that may be contributing to this conversation in regards to your carbon footprint and the ways that trees can offset that. So that's one of the pieces I can throw out there. Trees are just awesome.
Mighty Abe, thank you for saving that on that question. I think I might bring you up for every conversation. All right, so next question that I have. Let's see what we got here. Question to Mr. Francis, do you work at the River Institute? If not, where could I contact you?
Well, based off of how much we work together, it's like I almost do, but we have these wonderful partnerships we've built together over the years. I'm actually the environmental services manager for the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne's environment program. And I'm going to be a part of this, and I'm sure that Lee can share my contact information. And however, and actually, I mean, while we're at it, I was actually looking at Caleb Roach's question and the plans to work with Public Works. And for some reason that just stuck with me because I'm actually a part of the Department of Infrastructure and Housing, and how I'm addressing climate change within my own organization and new department is developing a sustainable community building working group, and that we're developing mechanisms to address different ways of putting in roads or building new buildings. And I even get to work with wastewater, and I'm really intrigued by what that's going to look like in the long term. So I don't know. I want to be able to be a part of those conversations because I'm a part of Public Works, and I could really use some insight in how to kind of keep growing that relationship myself.
Thank you, Abraham. So Caleb, thank you for being a part of this conversation. Within the capacity of this role, I do have an opportunity to speak with such individuals as yourself and your departments. It is on my agenda of activities. And so I would be interested to see what information you folks have, what challenges you folks are looking at, and where resources can be applied. And so I'm grateful that, again, Abe is in the space. And if there's an opportunity for all of us to intersect in the same opportunities, I think that would be wonderful. Is there a possibility for it? Absolutely. I don't know what capacity is. So I will follow up with you in the near future, Caleb. If you can just put an email somewhere for us to track you down, we'd gladly have that. And also, Madame Milner, I have your information. We have the chat information. We'll get your information to Abraham shortly. The next question that I have is, do the obvious lack of dining in these days due to, we're seeing a ton of takeout containers that are not recyclable. Is there anything we can do about that? So correct me if I'm wrong, and if I understand correctly, The black containers are part of a separate recycling stream. They're not able to be easily recycled at certain locations. This is a question that I could look at, Mr. Donnell. I thank you for it. I don't have an exact answer, but I think I know somebody who can give me something. So let me come back to this, and these questions will be answered on the Future Climate Leaders page. Give us about a week's time to follow up with these, but please keep your questions coming. We're going to see what we can do with them. And finally, my final question that I have here on this part, Jillian Axton. I live on a dredged canal that connects to the river. We have pike spawning, but due to buildup, it is getting narrower and less flow. Should we be discussing with the community to clear the mouth to allow flow, or should we think of allowing it to be filled by the land surrounding it? We are one of several dredged canals in the Baynesville area. So I'm not a conservation authority. Mr. Ridal, this is a possibility for you to enter into this space. Abraham as well. I'm going to put myself on mute. Whoever gets to the mic first wins.
Well, I'll start, and I think it's the Conservation Authority that really is the group to look at. And there's some opportunity, I think, in terms of our remedial action plan and some of the objectives we have in terms of clearing out, in improving water quality conditions in around the tributaries. So, I mean, there's a number of factors that have to look into whether a project is feasible and whether it's advisable. And I think, you know, Brendan Jacobs and those people that work at the Raisin Region Conservation, this is really their area and their planning. And so that would be the contact at the Raisin Region Conservation Authority.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Abe, I saw your head leaning into the camera. Did you want to step in for a moment?
Well, my idea around things like that is I think it's important for pike to be spawning around here, considering that they do depend on the water level changes in order to thrive in this area. So it's really intriguing to hear about them going to be doing so well in the canal, especially with it narrowing. But also a piece of me is like, what about the ability for landscapes to adjust naturally instead of us trying to control them and fix them, you know, in the same way that we're trying to harden shorelines instead of naturalize them. You know, it's sometimes it comes back to me like, why are we trying? We try so hard to control things that are outside of our control in regards to those things. So sometimes it comes back to kind of a moral question to me. Like we're trying to control a relationship. So I often just come back to that and think about the agency of the river within that conversation. And there is also that wonderful biology around it too. And I think even Cornwall's history as a massive wetland, apparently, that I didn't know about until recently, I think is really intriguing. That an entire city was built on a wetland. And what does that mean for the future? And how does that affect us? So I don't know. I like to dream and question everything. So it sounds cool to possibly do something about it, but I wonder if the reason that the pike are thriving out there is because of the narrowing of the channel and those shifts and changes that have happened. So always coming back to the research and doing that deep research before making a step forward in regards to that. So that's my perspective on it.
Thank you very much, Abe. So we have two opportunities there. Obviously, a conversation with Abe brings us closer to a different kind of thinking. And a contact that is available for you, Jillian, would be Brendan Jacobs out of the Raisin River Conservation Authority. However, if you've reached out, please reach out to myself. Our email information will be present right after this broadcast. And there is conversation that can be happening around these issues, but also understand, I want to make sure that we're all aware that there is capacity and opportunities within this position. There's capacities for opportunities, but there's also conditions. So there's only so much ability for this individual to do certain things. And I don't want to promise anything for people, but I want you to be heard. So in the absence of this town hall, where would that question go, right? This is what we're trying to do with this kind of space, is give that elephant some size and dimension and allow us to poke at it and figure out how we're going to work ourselves around it or get it out of the room. So I apologize if some people feel let down in some of these answers from myself, but again, I am not a scientist. but I'm happy to be a steward within the space to carry your questions forward. So Jillian, if you're unsatisfied, we will have a conversation in the future. But Jeff, I'm grateful for your contact, and Abraham, I'm grateful for your perspective. Are there any other questions that I may not be seeing right now? I'm waiting for my administrators. Is it popping? Are we having a party in the other room, guys? What's going on here? Somebody likes Joel's question, which is good. Okay, perfect. So I guess we'll do some work there. Near pond, okay, that's a side conversation. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions carried forward onto my question. Oh, 2 more I've just populated. 1 second. Joel, I've got a question, but a suggestion of sorts coming from you. It says, would it not be advantageous to change dark surfaces to light colors, examples, roofs and asphalts, to reflect more of the sun's rays away from the earth? I would say that is an idea. That would be a question, I imagine, for Public Works to consider as a composition of their cementing. That is a good opportunity, but then you're talking about roofs, which means the consumers have an opportunity to make that choice as well. So this is the other challenge with the questions that we have, and it's not that anybody's saying anything wrong. There's opportunities for the government at the top to provide solutions, and there's opportunities for the consumer in the bottom end to make their own decisions. So this is a very good question. It would be advantageous as far as what I understand, but how to make that come into effect is another story in and of itself. Any other questions from this side? I'm not seeing one on this side. Let's see. All right, I've got a question here. I'd like to know if I can bring a container to be filled at the local fill, for example, and why this is not. I would like to know why I can bring a container to be filled at the local fill, for example, and why it's not allowed with restaurants. Certainly would eliminate much garbage from our landfills. Can the group here lobby the province about this? So I can step into this space. In a previous life as a restaurant owner, Toronto had a wonderful pilot project that was taking place before COVID had hit, and they were going through the process of how they were going to take that in safely. So you have to understand, this is the reason why Tim Hortons doesn't allow you to take your refillable mug and put it through the drive-through window. If I'm a person, let's take COVID for example, and I'm making contact with the surface, I'm now going to take that impacted surface and put it through a threshold. So that's a door, that's the other side of the counter. Now, if your hand washing protocols are not safe, things happen between human to human interactions. If my hand touches that mug in the wrong place and my hand now goes to another location that touches that place, we now have a chain of events that we can't solve. So what they do in the whole health in the food system is they don't want outside forces entering into a contained safe zone. So that's the reason why restaurants, especially large chains, will not do that. It's a liability issue. I agree that there should be some mechanisms in place. The Toronto pilot project was looking at how they could take in containers, sanitize them first, put them through to be have food placed into them, and then sent through. Now, it is a cumbersome process. They're also looking at how do we trust if somebody has cleaned a container properly and brought that usable container through. There was a lot of different hurdles to jump to satisfy a health regulation side of things, but there was movement. There was a group that was pushing it through the BIA, if I understand correctly. And then we entered COVID, and so that idea kind of went by the wayside because of the state of affairs that we're currently in. I will tell you that there is a growing group, but it's more of a liability issue of how do we protect not only the business, but protect the business from the public. I think there's opportunity there. I do believe there is, but I don't yet know how we would go about doing that. Could there be a group around that? Could be that consideration around our BIA to proceed on? Absolutely. Could we be more attentive to other organizations or BIAs that are doing this in that space? I absolutely agree, but I don't have a fundamental answer as to why we can't do it. We can do it, but it's always safety of the individual and the greater public is what we balance against. So that's my response to that point. All right, so those of way satisfy the health authorities, happy to discuss. Somebody has an opportunity. So I have a way that should be able to satisfy the health authorities, happy to discuss. whomever that person is, you need to send me an email, because there would be a lot of happy people that wouldn't like to be throwing out recyclable material. They'd like to be in the reusable space. So if you can provide that insight, we'd greatly take it. I am coming to the end. I'm not seeing any questions. On my back end side, I'm looking for Louis to give me a signal of anything. We're approaching the 8 o'clock hour. We're not going to end this conversation, but I want to make sure that everybody is where they're supposed to be and feeling comfortable with what's happening next. I'm going to turn the floor over to any of my guests if they want to have a last minute conversation, input any necessary environmental plugs, and then I will close with a proper thank you. So I'm going to start with my guest speaker. I'm going to let Abraham Francis provide us with an opportunity to say goodbye, and then I'll move over to Jeff. And if Pam isn't feeling shy, she can say a few words, and then it'll come back to me if that's okay with you, Louis, and I'll check the questions in the meantime.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and provide the opening as well as participate in these conversations. I love what I do. I love the environment. I love the ways that I can massage with my culture into that, because I see science is just as another way that we communicate with the land and creation. And by understanding that relationship, we can better fulfill our roles and responsibilities to it. And I think it was really cool when Pam was talking about the power of community, because everything that I do is all about my community, all about my people, all about how I'm going to empower them to heal from generations of disrespect and restore our relationship with the land and so much that has been taken from us. And the science of climate change. I just love science in general. I will listen and absorb whatever I can get my fingers on. And it's always just such a great time. And I appreciate being a part of this team and collaborating with the River Institute, because I get to talk with scientists all the time and I don't feel like a crazy person. And I think it's really great with that, you know, we are establishing these conversations and looking forward to future climate leaders. And I guess like my closing statement is to be kind with yourself. There's no way to be perfect in this journey. And that there's systemic change that needs to be happening too. But each bit of work that you do, whether that be planting an acorn or getting a factory shut down. Those all are really important actions, and just to be kind to yourself, and that, we are living through COVID and we are exhausted, and that sometimes getting takeout is not the worst thing in the world that you can do for the environment. Sometimes it's about your mental health that day, and you can't cook. And so I just wanted to end with that because of this collective grief we're feeling, and that there's hope out there, and that the land takes care of us, and there's good medicine out there. So let's help protect it for future generations to access to. And yeah, I'm really excited about this. So yeah.
My friend, thank you for being here, and thank you for your good medicine. Mr. Ridal, it's up to you, my friend, if you'd like something to say.
Yeah, I like the first request I would have, Lee, is never to have to follow Abe again.
Yeah.
So, but I do like his message in terms of being kind to yourself, because we can put very high expectations in trying to be perfect. And it is hard within our society, the one that we live in, because there's so much that is already pre-engineered and fixed for us. But if we can get better every day, I think that's and try and continue to try to make a difference. So what I would say is this is the start of this journey, and it's going to be adaptive. We're going to learn from you already this evening. Obviously, I've always said the most interesting part of any workshop or session are the questions and answers, and it's a give and take. And you tell us what you want to hear. Some of the questions are obviously like really, you can see the wide interest that people have. They want to know more about the ecosystem. They want to know more about the river. And what I would ask you, if you've been listening in, is for the next one, join us, but bring a friend, and ensure that you can connect. So let's just start. We start with a small stream, and trickle and gets larger and larger, so that by the end we get to that final mystery speaker that we have 1,000 people or more joining in. So that would be my hope and my wish for this event. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm going to go see if I can get a visual signal from Pam. Pam, did you want to speak? A thumbs up, thumbs down? You wave me and wave me away. You can do whatever you want. What do you want to do?
No, I'll just echo Jeff and Abe's comments. Thank you so much for kicking this off in this way. Thanks to everybody for joining us this evening. And I'm really encouraged by all of the comments and questions. And, it's great to see this kind of enthusiasm. I feel that this whole climate change issue, climate action, can be very overwhelming. And I think a lot of people feel like, who am I? What can I do as one person in the whole world that's being impacted by this? But that's what this program is aiming to do, is give us the little things, right? The little steps and the little things that we can do. So thank you for starting this off. And Abe, thank you so much for not closing the meeting. I was expecting to have the official closing as we commonly do, but I love that you've decided to leave this open, because it doesn't end tonight, right? And a month from now, we'll all be together again with some new friends. But I think the time in between is really important too, to talk with our families and talk with people that we know, and bring some more ideas and questions to the table. So thank you for that. And that's it for now, Lee. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. All right, folks. So I'm just going to head this off. I'm going to be very polite with you folks. I'm not the end all and be all. And this thing that you're taking part in, this town hall, is not going to solve everything, but it's a part of what we're going to be doing. It's a part of your process. Further down the line, we're going to have this website that's available to you. I'm going to encourage you highly to take it up, to make it a part of your understanding of what your slice of the pie is. On the back end, I'll be doing my best effort to be speaking with people that are in this space to find out what they're doing, what their needs are. And as we put that forward, you'll have an opportunity to say, hey, that seems like something that I want to enter into. And what's interesting about climate change solutions and a lot of larger issues in life is it's a moving train of thought. And you're not judged where you come on this train. We're going to get to that destination. And so you don't have to have all the information. You can just want to do something about it. And this is where these things start. So I like that Abraham had that gentle approach, that it's okay to be who you are in the space that you are. It's just more so for you to be aware of the other things as well. And I think I want to be very careful that we're not redistributing information and just hammering home that climate change is this doom and gloom thing. As long as we are here, as long as your feet are on the ground, you're a part of the solution too. And you don't have to do everything, but if we can all do one thing, 120,000 people doing one thing, if we all clapped at the same time, imagine the sound that would make. If we all acted on the same thing, imagine the effect that would have. And Angela Parker made a comment in this side conversation saying that she was a part of the River Institute carbon reduction plan 10 years ago. And she said she wished she had this energy. I expect 10 years from now, we'll look at this video and say, wow, what a way we've come. Look at all these initiatives we put together. Look at the things that people care about and have been able to be good stewards for. So this is just an opportunity for all of us to gather around, have an open conversation, and respect that it's not perfect. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, but we're going to try. That's the most important thing. And better to try today than to scratch our heads tomorrow. So let's move in that spirit. I don't think I have anything left to say. Let's take a look. This is the thank you screen. We made it, ladies and gentlemen. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Louis Savard on the back end. I'd like to thank Zach, my ZZ Top, my technical guy on the back end. And I'd like to thank our guest speakers for taking the time to speak with us today. So for those that are watching at home, the next one is going to take place on June 15th, and that is going to be a space for Abraham to talk. And then that's going to be a space for you to engage. But now you know what this looks and feels like. And I hope that you're excited for what we are going to be bringing forward. I'm excited that you're here. And I hope that you keep up being the person that you are and keep seeking the good in the world and striving towards it. And we look forward to seeing you at the next town hall. So happy you got the staff. I think we're done here, folks. I think we did it. That's it.